Welcome to Aspire to Retire. I'm your host, Cheryl Nelson. Joining me are Ralph and Tim Short from the team at Welcome Home Financial Partners, a local fiduciary firm. So good to be here with you once again. Now, their mission is simple: to provide you with a personalized financial plan that aligns with your dreams and goals to retire confidently. Today's episode, 401k decisions, leave it or roll it, is all about helping you make one of the most important decisions you will face when you change jobs or retire: what to do with your 401k. Should you leave it with your former employer, or is it better to roll it over into an IRA or another retirement account? We know it can be confusing with a lot of terms and rules that make it hard to know what's best for your money. But don't worry. Over the next 30 minutes, we're breaking it down with easy to understand explanations, professional advice, and real life examples to help you make the right choice for your financial future. We'll explore the pros and cons of each option, what hidden tax fees might be there or other implications you should watch out for, and how this decision can impact your long-term retirement goals. Whether you're about to retire or switch jobs, this episode will give you the tools you need to make a smart choice for your 401k. All right, so I'm joined now by Tim and Ralph. Guys, great to be here with you as always. 401k, for those of us who don't know what it is, break it down for us in simple terms.
So what I would say to most people when I explain a 401k, it is a retirement program, but the 401k just means one thing. That is a tax code under the IRS code about retirement plans. The only people that are able to have a 401k is somebody that works for a private company, such as your company that you're working for now, okay? Not the government. If you're working for the government or a nonprofit, it might be a 457, a 403b. Those are just tax codes, and that's all it is. It allows you to take money from your salary and put it in a program that's tax deferred till later down the road.
Okay, yeah, thanks for breaking that down for us. You hear all those terms thrown around sometimes and people go, what do all these different numbers mean? So good to know that answer. And then when somebody leaves a job, what are their options for that 401k? Because if you switch jobs a lot, which people do now in today's society, you're jumping around company to company, and do you just have multiple pots in different 401ks, or is it better to take it and roll it over?
Well, it kind of depends on what you're trying to accomplish, right? There's a lot of people, if they do leave, what they usually do, most folks, is they take that old 401k and roll it into their new 401k with the new employer. I don't know if that's always the best option. Inside of your 401k, 403b, 457, whatever we're looking at there, just the employer-sponsored plan, you've got limited options as far as how you can invest your funds, right? And then if you're still working, there are some companies, if you make it past 59 and a half, which is the magic age for that penalty, you don't have to necessarily worry about that anymore, but you also might not be able to touch it until you actually separate from service. And we've worked with people who are well into their 80s that they're still restricted as far as what they can get out of that account.
What?
Yep.
Why would you be restricted in your 80s?
It's just the way that the plan was set up, right? So you've got to focus on, instead of rolling that into your current or your new employer account, maybe take it and put it into an IRA. Have more control of it and have more control over the investment options.
But the other thing I always tell people about is this: whoever you're working for, they get to choose the type of investments that you can choose from.
Oh.
Yeah, you may have 5 or 6 choices, but it's only with one company. If you have an IRA that you have complete control over, you might have it a whole lot different company that you would rather invest in.
That makes sense. Okay, so then what does it mean if you, quote, leave your 401k with a former employer? I mean, if you leave and go to a different job, but that money's still sitting there.
That just means exactly what you said. It's still sitting there in an account for you, okay? But you have no control over that account unless you move it out. One of the things that I've seen a lot with our clients is that if they left it there and the company basically moved it to a different investment company, they may not get notification of it. And now all of a sudden you don't know where it is, what it's doing.
Exactly.
And like you say, it's just sitting there. What's the point of just having your money sitting there?
And you can't grow it because you're not putting anything in it.
Well, you can still grow it depending on how it's
really?
invested, but you can't add any more into
Well,
it.
yeah,
So,
that's what I'm saying.
right. So the old 401k, if you're no longer with that employer, you can't put more money into it. Right. but you don't have any management of it. You're not really focusing in on what that money's doing for you. And it's important to make sure that your money is not just sitting there.
So let me ask you this. If you think it's bad enough when you're working for somebody that you don't have enough information to make choices, if you leave there, how much information do you think you're going to have at that point in time?
Not much.
Do you have an advisor talking to you from your former employer about what to do? Probably
No.
not.
No, and I've been guilty of this. I've left it sitting there for years and forgot about it, and then had to track it down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So that's, I just say it's probably easier just to take care of it at that point and figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, once you leave or you know you're about to leave a company, it's good to get that professional advice. So, and who knows what that's going to look like? It's going to be dependent. I mean, who knows? Maybe you could take the 401k if it's a small portion and then convert it into a Roth, so it's going to be tax-free down the line.
That makes sense. And speaking of that, so let's say you wanted to roll it over into an IRA or a Roth IRA. Can you roll it over into either one? And there's no penalties for doing that, right? Or are there?
There's not going to be any taxes by rolling it in from your 401k to an IRA. The only way that you would not have a penalty for rolling it from a traditional 401k to a Roth is you're going to have to pay the taxes up front.
Right.
It has to be like to like. And that means a Roth can be converted to another Roth, a traditional into another traditional. But just understand, if you convert a traditional to a Roth, that penalty is called taxes.
Yeah.
And you're going to pay taxes on the whole amount that you pull out.
And it all depends on the type of money, right? There are some people who are able to contribute into a Roth in their 401k, so you could take that, put it to a Roth IRA. You know, there's different things. Like, it's all dependent on what that type of money is.
And did I see somewhere that some companies have Roth 401ks now, or am I making that up?
No, there are some companies that have it.
Yeah.
It's not as common as I feel like it should be. Because you don't have the income limits on that. So there's a lot of people around the area that make too much money and they can't open up or contribute to a Roth IRA because they make too much money. But there are more companies, I think, year in and year out that are kind of getting more accustomed to introducing the Roth inside their 401k. But it's not everywhere and it's not very common, but that's definitely something to take a look at.
Okay, good to know. And then the pros and cons, I think we talked about this a little bit already, the pros and cons of leaving your 401k with your old employer. Anything else we didn't cover with that, or have we pretty much covered all the bases?
Well, what I tell most people is that, you know, when you leave a company, let's say you had a company vehicle, you had a company computer, you had whatever, do you think they're really going to leave that company car or the company equipment with you? So probably not. Why are you going to leave your 401k with them, right? So you're going to have a lot more control of it. You can invest how you like. You know, if you want to get into cryptocurrency, you probably can't do that inside the 401k. Now, obviously, I don't recommend that for everybody, but there are different avenues that you can take. What it really comes down to is having more control of your funds.
Yeah, that's what everybody wants. We want to be able to control our money, know where our money is and what it's doing. It's time to take a brief commercial break, but Tim, we have a special offer. Tell us about that before we go.
All right, Cheryl. So the first 10 callers from today's program, pick up the phone, give us a call, 833-897-4845. If you save $250,000 or more for retirement, we'd love to bring you into the office where we'll create your very own retirement roadmap just for you. And the best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
Good to know. And that blue jacket looks really good.
Thank you.
Doesn't that just pops on the screen? All right, guys, we're going to open up those phone lines here. So if you'd like some personal advice about retirement planning or to schedule a consultation, call that number, 833-897-4845, or simply scan the QR code on the bottom of your screen. Coming up next, we will continue to discuss 401k decisions. Stay with us.
Imagine the future you've been wanting all along. A world where your retirement income is covered and you don't have to worry. Your financial assets are protected, and you have an experienced team fighting every day to grow your assets. Imagine a company creating tax strategies and legacy plans to make sure your loved ones are protected no matter what happens. At Welcome Home Financial Partners, we're an experienced financial team with the right professional licenses and an unbreakable commitment to making our clients feel like family. Here you'll find determined, friendly faces in a world filled with obstacles and problems. We help plan your retirement income to ensure you won't run out of money in retirement. We build in protection to make sure your assets are covered on all sides. We focus on growing your wealth to combat inflation and rising cost of living. And we design tax strategies to help you avoid paying back what you shouldn't while protecting the people you love. our team never stops fighting for you. With an unparalleled work ethic, we work hard because we know your future depends on it. We're proud to help you choose the life you want to live in retirement. Welcome to your financial future. We're so glad you're here.
Welcome back to Aspire to Retire. We're having a great show today. Lots of good conversation. So let's hop right back in with Ralph and Tim Short. Guys, all right, talking 401ks today. So how could someone figure out if their old employer's 401k plan offers good investment options or not? Because like me, I mean, I let you guys handle everything. I don't know what I'm doing with pick this or that.
Well, usually, you're going to have, 5, 10, maybe 15, maybe 20 if you're lucky as far as investment options are concerned. I think a lot of people take a look at what's called the target dated funds, right? So they'll see those numbers and it says 2025 or 2030 or whatever the number is. And really the strategy, if you will, behind that is, the further out you are, because that's the year, the more aggressive it is. And as you get closer to that year, the more conservative. They change up some strategies on that. And we see a lot of times where a lot of people do have their 401ks sitting in just one fund, and that is a target dated fund. So that's not always the best option. Not that that can't be part of it. But, give us a call. We'll sit down with you, see what your current 401k is, what it's doing, and rebalancing that. And that's something that we've done with folks before is, okay, hey, you're 55 years old, more than likely you probably can't touch your current 401k, but these are your investment options. This is what we would recommend as far as rebalancing that, and then we take a look at the other stuff.
But the other thing I would say to most people is those target dated funds, it's more or less a template. It may not more or less dictate what you want it to do, because you may be more aggressive than that fund that you chose right there because of your retirement age. So that's something to be aware of.
Okay, good point there. We touched on the difference between a Roth IRA and a traditional IRA, but break that down for us once again. Simple terms, what is the main difference? And you said the Roth, I believe, if you make too much, you can't contribute.
Yeah, there's a lot of different nuances to each one. A traditional IRA, simply put, is it's pre-tax money that goes into it. Whether it's a former 401k rollover or whatever, it's just pre-tax money, okay? There are certain rules that you have to follow before you can touch it without penalty. You have to hit 59.5 for the most part. You can pull out whatever you want to. Anytime you take money out of the account, you're going to have to pay your taxes on it, whether it's withheld directly from the deposit or distribution or not. That's what it looks like. Now, when it comes to a Roth, was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, one thing I would say, when we talk about pre-tax, that means you're going to take that amount of money away from your paycheck that year so you don't have to pay taxes on it.
You're paying taxes ahead of time. Is that
No, you're not paying taxes at all.
No.
So let's say that you contributed $5,000 to your 401k pre-tax. That means if you made $50,000 a year in salary, your taxable income is going to be $45,000 because you've taken that $5,000 away from your, so you're going to pay less.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
Taxable income.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, breaking this down is actually not as simple as it seems.
Well, and that's why we always talk about, is it better to have the tax break now? Well, if you're making $400,000 right now, you're probably better off, getting the tax break now. But down the line, we don't know where tax rates are going to be. If they never increase and nothing changes and it stays flat, which I can assure you probably ain't going to happen.
Yeah.
But there could be different consequences. So it's all a numbers game, whether you need the tax break now or not. But going back to the Roth IRA, that's funded with after-tax money, so money that you've already paid your taxes on. Now there is a different set of rules for the Roth versus the traditional. You still have that 59.5 rule, but also has to be at least 5 years in place as well. Now that gets really tricky, and we won't dive into it now, but it gets really tricky when it comes down to conversions and whatnot, because that could restart some 5-year time periods for you. So it's really important, because we see it all the time. We meet with folks a lot of times. They're like, hey, why don't I just put all my money into a Roth? Well, it sounds great. Everybody wants tax-free money, right?
Right.
Sign me up. I mean, we all want tax-free money, but you've got to make sure you do it in the right way, because if you make a mistake, the IRS normally isn't very kind to you. If you make a mistake, there's going to be some penalties associated with it too. And if you don't have the proper information in order to make the right call for yourself, then you could put yourself in that boat.
for example, if you're putting too much into a Roth, if you're making too much money.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if you make too much money, there's income limits on the Roth IRA. Now, also too, is there's contribution limits on these as well. That's different than conversions and rollovers, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I know this is a 30-minute show. We don't have enough
I know.
time to dive into each rule and each scenario.
Yeah.
You just have to know you've got to get the proper advice.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Very good information there. So now what if somebody has a 401k, going back to 401ks, and their balance is small? Does it make sense to leave it there if they leave an employer or to roll it over?
No matter what size it is, you have to understand you want complete control of it, whether
Doesn't
it's
matter, okay.
$1,000 or
Yeah.
$1 million. Don't you want control over your money?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And then I think we talked about penalties and avoiding penalties when rolling over your 401k. The only penalties come is if you're taking it without rolling it over, right? If you're trying to dig into that money.
So once again, it kind of goes back to what type of money it is. So yes, if it's pre-tax money and you quote unquote cash it out, then yes, you're going to be responsible for whatever you took control over, right?
Yeah.
Now, if it's a pre-tax account, it's a 401k, but it's pre-tax dollars. If you roll that into an IRA, it's a qualified rollover. You're not responsible for those taxes until you touch the money from the IRA.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now also too, and we haven't talked about this yet, but required minimum distributions, AKA RMDs.
Yeah.
So those are things that you need to pay attention to now, because we still have folks coming in saying, hey, I turned 70 today, this year, let's say, I'm going to have to start pulling money out. Well, no, that's not true anymore, because they changed that law about 4 years ago to where they've bumped the age back. And they've changed that rule quite a few times in the last few years. So you really have
Really?
to be up on that, because if you don't need the money, and Dad, I know you can say the same thing, we've met with a lot of people that say, hey, I want my IRA to go to my kids or my grandkids. Well, if you take out money at 70 when you don't need to, then that's less that they're going to get.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if you don't need it and you want to continue to let that baby do what it's doing, the account, by all means,
Yeah.
do it. But once you hit 73, you're going to be required to take your minimum distribution.
You have to take something.
And if you don't
Yeah.
take it out, they're going to charge you 25% of what you should have taken out.
Are you kidding me?
That's a
Yeah.
penalty.
So where should you put it then if you don't need it, if you're in that boat?
So it kind of depends. I mean, we've looked at folks before and say, hey, if legacy planning is your biggest thing, that you want to make sure that your kids or your grandkids are set, maybe you take out some of that money, and obviously you want to pay your taxes on it, right? Let's go ahead and withhold the taxation, but maybe life insurance is something to take a look at, where you can take those RMDs, fund a life insurance policy, and then that money, for the most part, is going to go over. As long as you set it up correctly, it will go over to your heirs tax-free. So
Yeah.
that's one strategy to use.
Okay. And we've been talking about rolling it over or leaving it. Is there ever a circumstance where it would be better to leave the money in a 401k rather than rolling it over?
I would say it's an individual choice, and it depends on what you're trying to do. If you need some money where it wouldn't be a charge to take money out because you could do a loan in your old 401k, that's a possibility. But to sit here and say you should do this or should do that, it depends on that individual situation.
Right.
Yeah, and also too, you know, when it comes down to a 401k, there's going to be fees, right? But usually you only see the administration or the bookkeeping fee, which is pretty minimal. And a lot of people don't want to pay anybody anything anymore, but you get what you pay for,
Exactly.
right? So if you are like, you know what, I don't want to pay anybody any fees, then maybe if you're that individual, maybe it's better to leave it there. But going back to you get what you pay for is, what if you bring it to a professional and say, hey, what can I do better? How can I be more efficient? How can I make sure I can retire the way that I want? Then you're going to talk, we'll discuss fees and such with you.
Yeah, it helps, and that's why you guys are here. And speaking of which, you have a special offer to tell us about once again before we go to break.
We do. So the first 10 callers from today's program, if you've saved $250,000 or more for retirement, give us a call, 833-897-4845. We'd love the opportunity to bring you into one of our 3 offices around town and create your very own retirement roadmap. Best part is we'll do it on a complimentary basis.
All right, keep those questions coming and take advantage of our professionals. And yes, call for advice now or even schedule a consultation at that number 833-897-4845. Coming up next, we'll feature some of your burning questions. Stay right there.
It was the longest running bull market in history. Everything was looking up. While inverted yield curves pointed to a recession, The market kept going. And then, if you're planning to retire soon, that could spell bad news for your returns. Our team can help you better withstand the bear market. Now more than ever, you need a financial professional to stand with you. Visit our website to learn more about our services. You can call or email our office to schedule your complimentary consultation today.
Welcome back to Aspire to Retire. Okay, it's our favorite part of the show. Time to feature some of your questions. And we're going to start with Lucky Marianne from Reedsville. Marianne says, I have a few old 401ks from previous employers. My sister tells me to just roll them all over into my current account, but I'm not sure this is the right move for me. Would you recommend somebody to do this? And this is kind of what we've been talking about, and I bet I know what you're going to say.
It depends. And what I mean by that is, what kind of investment program do you presently have right now? It may be something that you aren't very fond of because they have extra fees, maybe variable annuities or anything like that. But we can't tell you from here what we would recommend to you. That's what I would say to you is come in, give us a call, let us take a look and see what your options are.
Yeah, and Marianne, if you've got a few different accounts out there, I think simplifying your life, especially when you get closer to retirement, is good, right? So regardless of where it's going, I think combining some accounts would probably be well suited.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot easier too when they're all kind of in a place where you know where they are. Next is Tyrone from Chesterfield. Tyrone says, I have a deferred profit sharing account with my job, and I did not know until now that I can contribute to a Roth inside this account. Is this something that you would advise me to do?
Oh, that's good. So we've talked about this a little bit before, right?
Yeah.
A lot of other well, I shouldn't say a lot, but there's some other companies that are starting to participate, having Roth funds inside of their 401k or deferred profit sharing account. Really what it comes down to is the numbers, right? What we want to see is what your current income is. Going back to, do we need the tax break now? If you're going to retire next year, starting a Roth when you've never had a Roth before, you're going to probably have to wait another 4 years into retirement before you can touch it. I don't know if that's the best decision. So it depends on where you're at, your personal situation. But I do believe that maybe contributing to a Roth might be a good idea. We just got to take a look at the numbers and see when you want to retire.
Yeah, so no matter when or what age you are when you get a Roth, you have to wait 5 years before you can touch it?
Or to 59 and a half, whichever's longer.
Yeah. So if you were past 59 and a half, let's just say for this illustration, if you were 60, you're going to have to wait to 65.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
What if you're 58?
Same thing, 5 years.
5 years.
Yep. Whatever's longer.
I don't like this rule.
Yeah, I don't think any of us do.
Talk to the IRS.
All right. But it's good we're breaking this down in simple terms because this is a lot. That's why these folks go to school for all this stuff. They know what they're talking about. Next up, Barbara from Short Pump. Barbara says, I am 61 years old. I am getting close to retirement, about 1 year away. I'm concerned about the amount of money and the amount of risk that I have in my 401k and wonder what I can do right now to protect what I have worked so hard for. Completely understand.
Well, what I would say is, have you talked to anybody with your former employer or your employer now to discuss anything like that? Probably not. But what I would suggest to you is the closer you get to retirement, you better start thinking about, in case the market does take a tumble, are you ready for that? Do you have money set aside that you could tap into that you wouldn't have to get into your retirement accounts, or maybe your 401k now is turning into 201k because you've lost so much money. So if you have other sources of income, that's where I would start taking money out at that time. But you need to know what's happening with your 401ks now.
Okay. Mark from Saluda says, how are taxes going to affect my 401k? I have heard people say in the past that if I want to cash it out, I will not receive that amount.
Well, once again, it depends on what type of money it is.
Yeah.
We always assume, because Roth hadn't been around for so long inside of 401ks, that the majority, if not all, is going to be pre-tax, right? So yes, if you've got $200,000 in a 401k that's pre-tax and you cash it out, you assume that money, you're responsible for the taxes on that, plus all the other income that you've got throughout the year. So I don't think I've ever recommended anybody to go ahead and cash out a 401k. What normally is better for folks is let's do a rollover, let's figure out what investment options are better. If you do need money out of it, there's nothing wrong with tapping into it, but you got to make sure that you do it wisely, because the worst thing you can do is work 30 or 40 years, build up this wealth just to give the majority of it back because of taxes.
Yikes.
So I'm going to ask you one question, Mark.
Okay.
If you're making $50,000 a year salary, is that all that money yours?
No.
No.
I
Why?
wish.
Because the government has their hand out for you. So think of that as your 401k balance. Not all of that is yours.
I don't like that at all.
That's the way it is.
Like,
We live on Main Street, remember that.
I know. Okay, next, Rhonda from Lakeside says, am I allowed to roll over my 401k if I still work for that company? Oh, that's an interesting one.
So a 401k rollover, sometimes, I'm trying to be really vague with this, but sometimes you can, right? We talked about it before, is, you hit 59 and a half, there's a lot of companies around the Richmond area where you can roll money out. It might not be the whole account balance. It might be a certain amount, or it might be a certain percentage. But while you're still working for that company, you might be able to do that. I say more often than not you can, but there are some plans around Virginia that are very restrictive as far as what you can and cannot do. So really the best thing is let's sit down, let's have that conversation. If you've got money inside your 401k that you're looking to move elsewhere while you're still working, we can have that conversation and figure out what your options are. But don't think just because you're working for that employer that you can't move any money. A lot of times you can, but there are some times you can't.
Wow, I never knew that. I thought if it was in there, it's in there, but that's good to know that you have that option.
Yep.
All right, we are about wrapping up the show here. So Tim, one more time, our special offer for our viewers.
All right, so the first 10 callers from today's program, give us a call if you've saved $250,000 or more for retirement. The number's right there on your screen, 833-897-4845. We love the opportunity once again to sit down with you in one of our 3 offices around town to create your very own retirement roadmap and discuss 401k rollovers like we have today. Once again, give us a call, 833-897-4845. Best part is it's complimentary.
And you said those 3 offices. What are your locations?
So we're in Ashland, in North Chesterfield, and in Chester.
All right, so I love that. Yeah, multiple ways to see these guys and talk to them. And of course, thank you as always for joining us. And if you would like some advice or schedule that appointment or consultation, call now, 833-897-4845, or scan that code on the bottom of your screen and you could be featured on our next episode. If you don't want to wait till then, please download the Aspire to Retire podcast that you can listen to anytime. On behalf of all of us at Aspire to Retire, I'm your host, Cheryl Nelson. Have a great day.